Hello everyone, my name is Chisom and I'm here to talk about my experience getting into tech. To give some context, I'm a software engineer who has had 4 to 5 years of experience in the industry, and I'm here to share how this entire process got started. First of all, when I graduated secondary school, I did not know what to do with myself. But because I'm an African child, I'm kind of expected to become either a doctor or a lawyer. But I didn't think an engineer was one of them because an engineer is more of the male profession. So I was meant to be a doctor. And I knew that I did not have the patience to become a doctor. And I did not want to unintentionally unalive somebody's child because I was tired or frustrated that day. So I decided to take a gap year to help figure out things about my life. And this is one of the first parts of the journey, is take some time to figure out what you want to do with yourself. It's always going to be better to take that time in the beginning and kind of be more certain of things than to rush into anything, especially if it comes with college and there's a hefty price tag attached to the outcome. During my gap year, I was watching, I think, CNN, and I saw an ad on code.org where Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, and a lot of other people talked about why people should get into tech. I had known that there was something like a software engineer. I honestly just did not know what they did or what being in tech meant. When I thought of an engineer, I still thought of like a mechanical engineer or a civil engineer, somebody that built things we could see. I don't know where I thought software came from, but it came from this magical place and I didn't know who built things. And after watching that ad, I knew that software engineering was for me because it ticked some of the boxes I needed for something I wanted to do with the rest of my life. It allowed me to work in lots of different industries. It also allowed me to work independently. It allowed me to have lots of scale and impact. And I think this is another important part of the journey. Have the faintest idea of what you want to do with yourself. When the people in the ad told me about what I could do with software engineering, I knew it was for me because it matched those things I was looking for. Now that I knew what I was going to study, I had to get into a good school, and I had to get into one of the top schools because, I don't know, I'm Nigerian, I'm competitive, I don't know, I just had to get into a very good school. And as I've explained in my previous video, going to my high school where it was ultra competitive and we were ranked meant that my transcript did not adequately represent my skills, because somebody in my school could do significantly better than people in other schools due to the academic pressure we were under. And I had to figure out how I could still go to a very good school. So this is another important lesson in this journey, is try to always find the back door towards things. In the middle of my college search, I found out about something called an all-women's college, which I've made a video about. And an all-women's college, basically, as the name says, is a college specifically and only for women. A lot of all-women colleges have historical connections to Ivy League schools and other top schools. Why? Because a lot of the major top universities were very old, and they're old enough to have existed in a time where only men were allowed to go to college. And a lot of all-women colleges were the sister schools to those big universities. And I knew that if I went to an all-women's college, they often have programs that allowed me to study engineering at those big schools. So that was my backdoor to getting a very good engineering degree. One, by paying less because all women's colleges are often cheaper, but also two, by getting in through the back door, it was less competitive for me because those big engineering schools were just harder to get into. I ended up going to St. Mary's College in Indiana, and I took all my engineering classes at the University of Notre Dame. College was very hard for me, as I've explained in previous videos, and I had to take an insane amount of credits, not only because I was trying to get those 2 degrees that I talked about earlier from 2 different schools, but also because I missed a semester because of my country going into recession. So I did not have the opportunity to spend the time applying for internships or trying to find them because I was just trying to survive. But what ended up happening is that I was in my final year. I was working in the school's IT center, and I was the person who was in charge of responding to IT help desk support tickets. And I really needed an internship because I felt like I needed to graduate with something on my resume that was software engineering specific. I had already developed some skills from classes, so I knew I was competent enough to code, but I just didn't have the opportunity of an internship. So what I did was I created my own internship. And this is another important lesson: engineer your own opportunities. So my college has this tiny bus that goes around late at night to help girls get back into their dorms. And that bus was called Blinky. But the problem with Blinky was that you had to call security that would call Blinky, and Blinky would then know to come and pick you up in the library or at your dorm or at different other locations on campus. That was not a very effective system because you could be waiting in the library for a while and you wouldn't know where Blinky was. So I scheduled some time with the head of the IT department and asked him, oh, could I create an app that lets people know where Blinky's at? He told me, oh, I really like your idea, but the student government basically gives us a list of demands every year, and none of those demands are ever met. Would you instead mind working on one of those things? And I was like, sure. And during that time, I was already tired of being a help desk support person. And one of the things that the student government wanted built was an app that basically showed you the amount of internal college money that you had on your ID. To give some context, my college had this thing called Munch Money, and that was basically points that you could use to buy things from our internal store, our internal college campus store. Or you could use it with local restaurants such as Papa John's. And we didn't have a good way of knowing how much Munch Money you had left. That's something you had to keep track of. And that's what I ended up working on, and that was my first internship. After my first internship at the school's IT center, I ended up applying to Facebook for an internship post-graduation from St. Mary's College in Indiana. And that internship was a horrible experience, as I've made a video about earlier. But during the internship, I remember my mother saying, maybe you don't hate tech, maybe you just hate working here. And I was so angry because I was like, woman, I am going through one of the hardest times in my life. I just want to leave tech and leave this entire thing alone. But I took some time to just reassess the entire situation and regroup and forgive myself for what I felt was like giving up one of the greatest opportunities I ever had. From then on, I worked really hard to see how I could help myself advance in my career. After that, I ended up getting an internship with someone that I deeply respect and admire. And after that, I knew that I really wanted to go back to the Bay because the Bay was still the tech capital of the world. And I kept on applying to jobs in the Bay Area, and that's when I got my first tech job. I say all this to say that the journey into tech is rarely as straightforward if you come from an unconventional background. You have to find back doors, you have to engineer the opportunities for yourself, you have to forgive yourself when you fail, you have to do a lot of things that nobody really talks about during their journey getting into tech. And I wanted to share this experience for somebody else going through it. Learn to be your own advocate. Know that this experience is not easy, but hopefully it'll be rewarding. Hope you all have a wonderful day. Yeah. Ooh.